Chapter 21 Seed prices have increased. Please recommend and collect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Mo wrapped up in the cotton coat he brought from the secular world and pushed a cart full of grain into the market. More than a month has passed since the harvest season, and the market is a little deserted. However, Lingzifu is Lingzifu and Fengshe is Fengshe. The relationship between the two is almost negligible. After all, how much money does Lingzifu have? How much spiritual sand and spiritual stone can be consumed? The popularity of this place relies on those casual cultivators who add blood to their knife wounds and tie their heads to their belts. These days, whether it's killing people or killing monsters, which one doesn't make more money than farming and mining? It's just that these casual cultivators didn't even bother to snatch the bit of spiritual sand in Ling Jifu's hand. Chen Mo pushed a cart of grain through the relatively lively Fengshe neighborhood. Occasionally, a few stall owners cast surprised glances, wondering why he came to sell grain at this time. However, they don't really care. Soon, Chen Mo arrived at Nyo's shop. The guard at the door announced, and then, with the other's disdainful eyes and words, he was led from the back door to the backyard. He also knew that Ling Jifu's status was very low. It's so low that anyone except the miners in the black mines can step on it. Chen Mo didn't care about the looks of these people, because he knew very well that no matter what world he was in, whether it was a game or reality, strength was the most important thing. Those gossips or sarcastic remarks will only be slapped in the face like crazy in the face of absolute strength, and what he has to do is to keep practicing hard and then have the strength to slap him in the face. After waiting for a while, Wei Wuwei came out wearing carved clothes. The moment he saw Chen Mo, the other party was slightly surprised, then smiled lightly and said, "I thought you wouldn't come. Last year when I was selling grain, I encountered a robbery on the road. This year I thought I would come later to avoid running into him again." Chen Mo had already thought of the reason, not to mention that the reason was completely tenable. Jia cultivator. Wei Wuwei frowned. How dare there be a Jia cultivator in Guchenfang City? Boss Wei, you don't know. Judging from the other party's expression, it doesn't look like he's pretending, but it's obvious that there are Jia cultivators around Fang City. Where? I want to see who dares to act recklessly in Guchenfang City. Wei Wuwei was furious, but how could Chen Mo know where Jia Xiu was? He shook his head and said, "If they don't jump out, I don't know where they are. In this case, if you can provide clues, I will reward you with 10 taels of spiritual sand per head." Thank you, Boss Wei. 12 ounces of spiritual sand was not a small sum of money for Ling Jifu, but for Nyo's shop, it was almost the same as sending it away to beg for food. Even Chen Mo looks down on him now. How much grain have you harvested just now? But with the robbery and repair incident coming to an end, Wei Wuwei turned his attention to Chen Mo's wooden cart. There are 6 bags coated on it. If nothing else, this kid has made a lot of money this year. More than 600 kilograms, I haven't weighed the exact number yet. Wei Wuwei snapped his fingers, and soon 2 waiters came forward to help with the weighing, and then whispered the number into the steward's ear. 642 pounds, it seems you made the right bet last year. Thanks to God. Chen Mo smiled back. Wei Wuwei nodded and said, "You will be charged 100 caddies for the rent, 50 caddies for the seeds, and you will be charged 500 caddies for the rest." How can I change it? Are you still charging 10 to 1? Linghuan rice has always been priced at this price. As long as Nyo's shop is open for a day, I won't treat you Lingzifu badly. The price is quite reasonable. It's better than the number 1, 2, and 3 grain stations, where you get 10 to 1, and you have to make a verbal commitment. Of course, now Chen Mo also knows that the owner is behind Nyo's shop, and credibility is naturally the most important. After all, Ling Jifu can be regarded as his personal asset after all. Thank you, Boss Wei. I have 10 big pills and the remaining 42 taels of spiritual sand. Keep the rest for seeds. 80 kilograms of grain for 1 kilogram and 6 taels of seeds. Wei Wuwei suddenly frowned slightly. Yes. Can't change it. Why? Wasn't it always this price before? Chen Mo asked, but he was cursing secretly in his heart. The price of seeds has increased. You don't know how troublesome breeding is. It takes a lot of effort just to cultivate the seeds. Transfer chi. Chen Mo became interested. As for the increase in seed prices, he put it aside for the time being. You want to know? Wei Wuwei asked, squinting his eyes. I have been planting grain for 2 years, and I really want to know where the seeds come from. Why can't the grain we harvest sprout? In that case, I will say a few more words. Wei Wuwei obviously meant this. The reason why they are different between spiritual rice and spiritual rice is because spiritual rice contains the purest spiritual energy in the world. But it is precisely because of this pure spiritual energy, the vitality of the spiritual rice itself is covered by the spiritual energy, making it difficult to break through the shackles and give birth to new life. Chen Mo heard it clearly. He had never heard of these theories before. As for the chi transfer spell, it was originally a grafting method born out of the magic way. After generations of spiritual planters improved it, it evolved into the current chi transfer spell. It can temporarily block the spiritual energy in the spiritual plant, and wait for it to be stored in the seed. The vitality appears, and then the seed is transferred back to become a spiritual seed. However, the spell itself is very expensive and the success rate is extremely low. Wei Wuwei talked eloquently, while Chen Mo nodded frequently. If this is the case, then the chi transfer spell itself is used for breeding, and his talent increases the success rate. Senior, what is your success rate? 30 caddies of linghuang rice can produce 1 caddy of linghuang rice seeds. Chen Mo couldn't help but frown. 30 caddies for 1 caddy, then 1 caddy and 6 tails of rice seeds itself requires 50 caddies. Add the processing fee. 80 caddies is also reasonable. Why, do you think it's easy? 30 caddies for 1 caddy, but you need to practice the air transfer technique to master it. Generally, the consumption of skilled level is about 50 caddies. Wei Wuwei explained again. Then senior, what do you think the price of seeds is now? This year it has risen to 100 caddies of grain for 1 caddy of seeds. If it is 1 caddy and 6 tails, I will give you a cheap price and buy you 150 caddies. Boss Wei. Chen Mo looked a little embarrassed, but in his heart he cursed the other party's ancestors. It is obvious that the Niu family shop is raising the price just because the Lingzifu has had a good harvest for 2 consecutive years. The reason why they don't make a fuss about the price of grain is that they are worried that the Lingzifu will sell the Ling rice to other grain stations. After all, he is not the only one in the whole market, but seeds are different. They are the only family that can produce seeds stably. Chen Mo speculated that other grain stations were not unable to grow them, but were intimidated by the power of the abbey owner. Is the price the same for other spiritual plants? Chen Mo asked cautiously. It's the same price. Okay, the rest will be exchanged for 35 taels of spiritual sand. Wei Wuwei smiled and nodded. Friend Chen, wait a moment. Just as the other party turned around to leave, Chen Mo suddenly asked, can I practice the chi transfer technique? Chapter 22, Breeding Technique. Got it, breeder. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wei Wuwei stopped and stood there in a daze, while the servant who was responsible for helping him covered his mouth and laughed secretly. You still want to become? If other spiritual plant husbands want to buy this air transfer technique, I will definitely not sell it. Wei Wuwei looked at Chen Mo sincerely and continued, however, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we call each other fellow Daoists. For 20 taels of spiritual sand, I can make the decision on behalf of the head of the family and sell the air transfer technique to you privately. 20 taels, but when Chen Mo heard this, he felt painful in an instant. Even if he now has nearly 200 taels of assets, he can't spend it like this. But if you want to breed, you can't avoid the air transfer spell, and he hesitated for a while. Do you think about it first? Wei Wuwei reminded him at the right time, and walked through the corridor to the depths of the shop. That place is not for spiritual plant husbands. Chen Mo looked at the other party's back and calculated the gains and losses in his heart. In the long run, learning this magic will definitely make money, but from the current point of view, it is optional. While thinking about it, Boss Wei has come back with the sachet and porcelain bottle. The other party handed over the big pill in his right hand and continued to ask, "What do you think?" "I think about it, but this is the price." Chen Mo was a little embarrassed. In his opinion, the other party was asking for a sky-high price, and all he had to do was to pay it back. "If you really want to learn it, I will pay for it out of my own pocket and give you 5 taels, how about it?" "That's impossible." "No, no." Chen Mo waved his hands repeatedly. The other party's words were obviously polite. The relationship between the two was not close enough to give each other spiritual sand, but the other party's words showed that the book air transfer technique was not worth anything at all. "No way. You and I are brothers, I will pay 5 taels, or 20 taels. Wei Wuwei pretended to be angry, and what he said was also forcing the other party to buy it. "I have already taken out 5 taels of it on my own initiative. If this spiritual plant husband's surname Chen doesn't buy it, wouldn't that mean he doesn't give him face? If he doesn't make money in a good year, does he have to wait until a bad year?" "Thank you, Boss Wei, thank you, Boss Wei." Chen Mo instantly showed excitement and gratitude. In the bargaining process, he can be hesitant, but in this situation, the more straightforward the better. Although the other party is clearly trying to rip him off, isn't he taking advantage of the other party? At that time, if I really take out the seeds, can the other party not accept them? The art of breathing was sold to him by the Nyo family shop, and he accidentally refined it. Wei Wuwei smiled and brushed his sleeves. "It seems that this kid is quite smart. This is 20 taels of spiritual sand, this is the art of breathing, take it." Chen Mo took the sachet and ancient book handed over by the other party, glanced at it briefly, and put it in his pocket. "Another spiritual sand income, but this is not the big head will come next time, and the next time." "Thank you, Boss Wei. I won't bother you any more. I won't keep you here either. Remember to come get the seeds in the spring." "Okay." Chen Mo said goodbye and left the courtyard of the Nyo family shop. When he left, the servant who was holding back his laughter finally couldn't help laughing out loud. A spiritual plant husband actually wants to become a breeder. Ha, ha. He covered his stomach and laughed a little exaggeratedly. He has so much spiritual rice to practice. Otherwise, I would sell this spell to him. Wei Wuwei's eyes were also full of laughter. The art of breathing is not a rare spell. This spell is also a spell that must be learned by those who want to become a special professional breeder among spiritual plant husbands, but its existence itself is very special. To practice this spell, a large amount of spiritual rice is needed to feed it. At the beginning, 100 gene or 200 gene can't even produce a few or 2 kinds of seeds. If you want to practice to the proficient level, the consumption will be stabilized to the point where 100 gene produces 1 gene, which requires at least thousands of gene or tens of thousands of gene of grain. That's nearly 10 low-grade spirit stones. How can an average spirit plant husband afford so much consumption? Therefore, the breeders in each market are cultivated by the owner himself and fed little by little with food. It was only because the cultivator surnamed Chen just now became a spirit plant husband for too short a time and didn't know many unwritten secrets that he proposed to learn the air transfer technique. What if it was another spirit plant husband? If you ask him if he wants to buy the air transfer technique, he will just roll his eyes and then say you are sick. Wei Wuwei was in a good mood. Although 15 taels is not much, it accumulates into a tower. He has indeed saved a lot this year. "Let's go, take you to the Wenxiang pavilion to drink a pot." The servant next to him was immediately delighted. Chen Mo left the Nyo family shop with 20 taels of spirit sand, 12 big pills, and a copy of air transfer technique. He stood at the door for a while, and finally decided to spend the 20 taels and the last 15 taels of spirit sand left from cultivation. Last time, he was also robbed by a cultivator on his way back to the spiritual field from the market. Now, even though he has reached the second level of qi refining and has achieved a small success in his flame palm, he still feels uncertain. Chen Mo walked along the main street of the market, passing by the medicine shop, spiritual food shop, blacksmith shop, scent pavilion, etc., and only the brothels took the initiative to invite him in for a leisurely time. They called it enjoying the feeling of heaven and earth intercourse. Of course, this time Chen Mo did not refuse directly, but asked the price. When he learned that drinking a pot of ordinary spiritual rice wine would cost 5 liang of spiritual sand, listening to a little song would cost 1 liang of spiritual sand, and enjoying a relationship would cost 3 liang of spiritual sand, he still refused. This price is not cheap at all. He estimated that 1 ounce of spiritual sand is equivalent to 10 ounces of gold using the common gold and silver. If calculated using the previous life, it is equivalent to 20,000 to 30,000 yuan. In other words, sleeping for 1 night costs 60,000 to 90,000 yuan, which is really gold-plated. However, Chen Mo also took a glance. The woman in the Wenxiang Pavilion is not bad in appearance. It is said that she is a cultivator in the early stage of qi refining. Do cultivators also engage in the flesh trade? Chen Mo suddenly laughed at himself. Cultivators also farm, aren't they all just trying to make a living? The receptionist who lost a business was not depressed for long before he attracted the next wave of customers. Brother Wei, isn't that the spiritual plant husband just now? Wei Wuwei looked in the direction the other party pointed, and it was indeed Chen Mo's figure. Unexpectedly, he would come too. Let's go, let's go. I told you that a spiritual plant husband, how dare he enter the fragrance pavilion? He really wants to be lustful and not his life. That this episode did not dampen the interest of the two. Soon, they entered the fragrant and charming fragrance pavilion surrounded by beautiful women. As for Chen Mo, after looking around, he finally walked into a robe shop. That's right, the thing that can bring him improvement in the shortest time is the magic weapon. He walked into the shop in a worldly cotton coat and took a quick look. Most of them were dozens to hundreds of spiritual sands, and you could buy one if you picked one. The boss who was sitting next to him with his eyes closed just glanced at him, and he didn't even have the interest to get up to receive him. A spiritual plant husband actually came to buy a robe. Ridiculous. You can look, but you are not allowed to touch. Chapter 23 Blue Python Robe, get it? You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the vast snow, 2 figures walked out of the withered woods. Both of them looked to be in their early 40s, one was slightly fatter and the other was slightly thinner. Judging from the appearance, the thin one has resolute eyebrows and is not angry, showing a certain dignity, while the fat one is a little honest. The 2 of them walked north along the ruts that had not been buried by the snow, and finally arrived at Guchenfang City. But they only arrived, not entered. The 2 looked at each other, their eyes flashing with light almost at the same time. Boss, there are fat sheep. Fat Jieshou said with joy. The same Shoujie cultivator also nodded with satisfaction. Judging from the rut marks, there is at least 500 kilograms in the car. The one who can sell 500 kilograms of grain is probably around the 2nd floor of qi refining. We have not waited in vain for a month. That's right. It takes more than an hour to go back and forth in this wilderness every day. If there is no one else, we will have to go back to plow the land again. Even if you become a jia cultivator, you cannot escape the hard life of a farmer. It's just a pity that the boy he let slip away last year never showed up. Shou Jieshou felt itchy at the base of his teeth. It was all because of that damn woman. Now he's fine. He's really damn good. Boss, maybe that kid is dead. Nod. It's possible. You can check it, but don't touch it. The robe boss squinted one eye and his voice sounded majestic. It seemed that as long as Chen Mo stretched out his hand, he would slap him with a knife without any ceremony. Boss, do you have any recommended robes? Chen Mo didn't know much about this. He had to buy it anyway, so why not ask? Do you want to buy it? The boss slowly sat up straight and opened one eye. Yes. My cheapest robe costs 30 taels of spiritual sand. Do you have it? In order to avoid wasting time, the store owner chose the most condescending method. Of course, this method is also the most efficient. Buy. Chen Mo nodded, but you have to explain it to me. As soon as he said this, the owner of the robe shop finally stood up. He came to Chen Mo, pointed to the exquisite robes hanging on the wall, and asked, "What price do you want?" About 40 taels. The boss glanced around and took down a purple python-embroidered robe from the corner. This purple python robe is sewn with silk spun out by 10-year-old cicadas. It also has formations laid out by masters in the late stage of qi refining. Below the third level of qi refining, spell attacks can be weakened by 70% and can even be resisted. A full blow from the fourth level of qi refining. Nice one. Sure enough, magic weapons are the fastest way to improve your strength. The spell attack is weakened by 70%, so he should be able to withstand it. Any more, that when business came to the door, the boss was no longer annoyed. He gently placed the purple python robe on the counter and took off another one. This is also made by the expert just now. It can weaken the spell by 60% and has no resistance to the qi refining 4. This level of ability can only increase the power of flame spells by monks in the early stage of qi refining by 10%. 1%, although it doesn't sound like much, it is very obvious when it is really used. Are there any others? Chen Mo asked again. At this time, his eyes had stopped at the bright yellow dragon robe located in the center of the store. The dragon may symbolize status in the mortal world, and there are extremely strict rules for who can wear it, but in the world of cultivation. The dragon is just one of the symbols. However, this robe exudes a breathtaking feeling in terms of appearance and momentum. When the boss heard this, he smiled jokingly. This is a robe that is only used in the later stages of qi refining. How much? Chen Mo still wanted to know. After all, it has no price tag. You really want to know? Chen Mo nodded. 8 low-grade spiritual stones. Hiss. It's indeed a good price. Chen Mo asked about a few more items. The cheap ones had poor effects, the ones with good effects were expensive. This is true everywhere. Putting aside the scam factor, you get what you pay for. In the end, Chen Mo could only choose between those 2 python robes. Boss, which one do you suggest I get? Of course it's the purple python robe. Why? Chen Mo asked. Isn't it enough to resist a full blow from the 4th level of qi refining? But why should I provoke the 4th level of qi refining if I have nothing to do? Do you think he won't fuck you if you don't mess with him? This time it was the boss's soul's turn to ask. It makes sense. It does make some sense, but what about after resisting a full blow? Isn't it the same death? It's as if he can beat the 4th level of qi refining. I want that blue python robe. Chen Mo pointed to the second one and said. The owner of the robe shop twitched his lips with a smile and said, 42 taels. Is it cheaper? I am a spiritual husband and don't have much money in my pocket. When Chen Mo was in school, he often relied on I am a college student to bargain with the boss. 41 taels. The boss still gave in, but it was obviously not because of Ling Jifu's identity. 38 taels, I bought it. See you off. The other party was straightforward and wanted to hang it on the wall. Chen Mo stared at it for a while, and the other party really hung up on him. He turned around and left, but his boss didn't stop him. Helpless, after leaving the shop for 7 or 8 meters, he turned back. 39 taels. The boss didn't even raise his eyes. Obviously he didn't care. 40, buy it if you can. Chen Mo knew very well that this blue python robe was definitely worth it. At this time, the other party reluctantly stood up again, took the robe, and handed it over. What bothers you the most is that you have to buy a robe when you have no money. The shop has been open for so long, but I have never seen Mr. Lingji buying a robe, picking and searching. At this time, Chen Mo really touched the robe. After taking it, it felt cool and refreshing. The feeling was not comparable to that of silk or chemical fiber. I took off my cotton-padded clothes and was about to put them on, but was stopped by the shop owner again. Where's the spiritual sand? No money, no clothes. After Chen Mo took out 40 taels of spiritual sand from his pocket and handed it over, a trace of surprise flashed in the other person's eyes. Obviously, even if he is ready to trade, the boss still doesn't believe it in his heart. Putting on the blue python robe, Chen Mo felt refreshed. At this time, the other party said. If you are not attacked, it will take about 2 to 3 years for 1 or 2 spiritual sands to nourish the formation in the robe. Do you need spiritual sand to nourish you? This was something Chen Mo didn't expect. Otherwise? Where does the spiritual energy come from? What about being attacked? It ranges from 1 or 2 to 1 or 2 months. Of course, if it's a 4th level qi refining blow, do you still expect it to be intact? Chen Mo nodded, which was reasonable and acceptable. Now, with this robe, his ability to protect himself has improved a bit. However, at this moment, he only had 5 taels of spiritual sand left in his pocket. Chen Mo walked out of the shop and looked at the sky. It was still early, so we could rush back to the fields before dark. He didn't waste any time, wrapped himself in cotton-padded clothes, pushed the cart he came with and hurried home. I have to go again tomorrow. Chapter 24, Practicing the Art of Breathing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The snow after winter comes and goes quickly. It is not like the goose feathers that fill the sky during the cold season, nor is it like the sleet and snow at the beginning of spring. It just accumulates gently on the horizon, and finally slowly falls on the dry surface. After leaving the gate of Fengshe, Chen Mo walked for a while and suddenly found something wrong. He clearly remembered that he did leave a rut when he came, and behind the rut were his moderately deep footprints, but now, these marks have been trampled into chaos. If it was just that, Chen Mo would only think that other monks came to Fengshe while he was selling grain, but outside the gate of Fengshe, there were only the traces he left an hour ago. Obviously, these people did not enter Feng City. That would be. Chen Mo frowned slightly, having a premonition in his heart. It seems that he was targeted by Jie Xiu. He glanced at the sky, and after some thought, he chose to hit the road. But this time, he deliberately made a big detour and spent nearly an hour longer before returning to his home in Lingtian, located in the north of Guchenfang City. This journey was extremely peaceful, didn't encounter any robbery. Sure enough, it's better to be careful and sail the ship of 10,000 years. Chen Mo secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He would not be so powerful that he would have to confront Jie Xiu just because he had achieved a small level of flame palm and had a blue python robe by his side. Who knows what the opponent's strength is? He is just a farming man. What does it look like to fight and kill? Returning to the cabin at home, Chen Mo finally felt a sense of security. He lit up the charcoal stove, took off his thick cotton clothes, sat by the stove, took out the chi crossing technique that he bought from Nyujie's shop for 15 taels of spiritual sand, and read it carefully. Chen Mo's talent, ability, and understanding are not all outstanding. Compared with those monks in the immortal sect, they can only be considered mediocre. It wasn't until the sky gradually darkened that he finally understood the practice of the chi crossing technique. On the other side, Zhuan and Lin Qin, who had been waiting for several hours, saw that it was already dusk and there was no trace of the fat sheep. So they cursed a few times and returned to their safe house. It was expected that the fat sheep would spend the night in Fengshe and come back to guard it tomorrow. Late at night, Chen Mo closed chi crossing technique. The next moment, the panel in front of me finally changed. There is an extra row in the spell column. Chi crossing technique, not yet started 1/50th. If you haven't started yet, your experience will be half. He dug out a bag of grain from under the bed, and began to try to make these spiritual rice breathe life according to the method of guiding chi and transferring chi recorded in the magic. Spiritual energy accumulated at his fingertips, and finally, with his unremitting efforts, 10 kilograms of spiritual rice was completely destroyed. Chen Mo spent a lot of effort to pick out 7 spiritual seeds with full grains and abundant spiritual energy from 10 kilograms. As for the other spiritual seeds, their spiritual energy has been lost at this moment and they have completely turned into useless mundane things. If you eat it now, it will also gradually cause death. Only 7 out of 10 pounds. Chen Mo smiled bitterly. No wonder Wei Wuwei was so generous and sold him this technique at a low price. With this kind of breeding rate, if you really want to make money through breeding, you will lose money. Of course, an ordinary Ling Jifu would most likely give up after receiving a blow, but Chen Mo was different. He had a golden finger. Open the panel. Chi crossing technique, not yet started 5/50ths. 10 kilograms of grain directly provided him with 5 experience points. At this rate, it would take about 400 to 500 kilograms to reach proficiency in this spell. Of course, this is just the seed production rate before getting started. If you get started, the effect will be even better. How about leaving 500 kilograms behind? Use it to practice the chi crossing technique. Chen Mo thought to himself. Soon, he made up his mind. he also gave up his original idea of changing to a low-grade spiritual stone. 5 or 60 taels of spiritual sand would be enough for him to practice for a whole year. In this way, it saves you another trip to the market. After practicing the chi crossing technique for a whole night, the experience of this spell reached 20 points. At this moment, the spiritual energy in his body has been exhausted. After a short rest, it was already dawn the next day. Chen Mo straightened his clothes and extinguished the fire in the charcoal stove. More than 600 kilograms of spiritual rice were pulled out from the cellar. Now, this year's harvest is only 500 kilograms, including food and waste, which should be enough. If his actions were known to other Ling Jifu, they might be attacked by a group of people. Is there such a luxury? Pushing the trolley all the way, we went to Guchenfang City on a familiar road. This time, Chen Mo chose to take a detour. Who knows if those robbery cultivators are still there. Fortunately, it was still very peaceful along the way and I didn't see any monks, but the moment he stepped into Fengshe, 2 figures poked out from outside Fengshe. One is slightly fat and one is slightly thin. Boss, another fat sheep came today. It seems that his cultivation level is not high enough. Zhuan raised his eyebrows with joy. It seems that they can make another fortune before spring. Lin Qing nodded with satisfaction and said, 2 fat sheep are in Fengshe. It seems we have to change our strategy. What's the strategy, boss? I'll listen to you. Zhu En's fat face looked extremely excited. This time, we will wait outside the market. If the cultivator who came out just now comes out, you will quietly follow him and rob him when you reach the wilderness. Lin Qing said his thoughts in an orderly manner. What about you? Zhuan grumbled. Obviously, he was a little unhappy to work alone. Me? Of course I will continue to wait in the market. Didn't I just say that there are 2 fat sheep in the market now? Lin Qing didn't want to miss any of them. Zhuan moved his not-so-smart brain and retorted angrily, then why are you and me staying here? Can't we switch? Are you stupid? The tall and thin Lin Qing rolled his eyes. The realm of the one just now was not as good as ours. What if the one who entered the market yesterday was at the 3rd level of qi refining? I am thinking about you. The slightly fat Zhuan thought about it and it seemed to be true, so he laughed happily again. Okay, boss, whatever you say. In the crowd, Chen Mo vaguely saw 2 figures. However, in the market, people were coming and going, so he just kept an eye on them and didn't go forward to investigate. Pushing the grain cart through the market again, the shopkeepers on both sides of the road didn't realize that it was the same person who came for 2 days. After all, a small spiritual plant husband didn't know how to attract their attention. Soon, Chen Mo arrived at the 123rd grain station. The door of the shop was open, and the waiter in front of the counter was fiddling with the abacus on the table boredly. It was already winter, and all the grain that should be sold had been sold. Days without business are so boring. Until the waiter saw Chen Mo and his full cart of grain. Chapter 25 Fellow Daoist, do you want seeds? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fellow Taoist, you are here to sell, is it you? In the business world, all you have to do is know how to judge people. Even if you only meet them once, you have to leave a general impression, be more proactive and familiar with each other in future meetings, and if you go back and forth, won't this long-term business be done? Mei Hua is the waiter at this 2nd and 3rd grain station. She is mainly responsible for soliciting customers, negotiating prices, weighing and selling grain. You remember me? Chen Mo was a little surprised. It was a bit surprising that he could still remember the incident. Last year, he brought 800 kilograms, but he sold us 200 kilograms. Mei Hua was still very concerned about the potential Ling Jifu. Didn't we sign a verbal agreement? I waited for more than a month, but no one came. Come here. Just as I was thinking about it, you came. Something happened and I was delayed for a few days. Mei Hua looked at the stacks of grain bags on the cart and asked, how many kilograms will they sell to us this year? What's the price of food? Chen Mo asked. I'm not here for nothing. The grain harvesting season has passed, and there is no need to hide it at this time for fear that other spirit growers will hear. In the future, as long as you come here, our 1st, 2nd, and third grain depots will all be 10. How about a better deal? Chen Mo nodded slightly. It is still not possible to bargain on the price of grain collection. Can. How many kilograms does it sell for? I've sold them all to you, weigh them. All. Sold them all to us. Mei Hua was very surprised. Then you don't have to pay the introduction fee. It's finished. Hiss. Mei Hua took a breath. This truck of food probably weighs 600 kilograms. Taking into account the 10% introduction fee and the 50% food tax, does that mean that the other party has so much food at 40%? After all the calculations, the harvest is estimated to be 1,500 kilograms. Doesn't that mean you have to have 8 or 9 acres of spiritual land? Half a wealthy family. Chen Mo didn't expect the other party's reaction to be so big. Fortunately, he didn't bring more than 1,000 kilograms in one trip, otherwise he might have caused some speculation. This year will be a good year. Wait a moment, I'll weigh the food for you. Mei Hua was overjoyed. In the past, it was good for a Lingzifu to come and sell dozens of kilograms of grain, but she didn't expect that he would actually sell more than 600 kilograms to them. The actions at the 1, 2, and 3 grain stations were very swift. After making sure that there is no problem with the food, start weighing it. 618 pounds, I counted 620 and directly brought a bag of 62 taels of spiritual sand, simple and neat. The main thing is efficiency. Chen Mo took the spirit sand and nodded with satisfaction. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, the waiter behind him stopped him. Fellow Daoist, please stay. Chen Mo's expression froze and he turned his head dissatisfied. This is not auspicious words. Mei Hua naturally didn't know why and looked at the other party blankly. Tell me, what's the matter? The other party looked around first, and after confirming that no one was around, he pulled Chen Mo to the corner of the house. What's the matter? Fellow Daoist, do you need seeds? How does it feel to be benefited? Chen Mo did not refuse in a hurry, but asked, do you have one? There are a few. Mei Hua didn't dare to say too loudly, let alone too full. After all, this is the monopoly business of Nio's shop, and rashly cutting off their customers and cutting off their financial resources will inevitably cause dissatisfaction among the shop owners. How to sell it? 8 taels per caddy. So expensive. Nio's shop only costs 5 taels per caddy. Shoo. Mei Hua made a silencing gesture. The situation is different this year. It seems that you haven't discussed the seeds with Nio's shop yet. How do you know? Chen Mo began to trick the other party into talking about it. This year they have doubled the price of seeds. What? How is that possible? He grows it for 10 taels per caddy, and we sell it for 8 taels. How about that? Do you want to consider buying from us? Are you harvesting seeds too? Chen Mo suddenly asked. This question stunned the other party. Aren't we talking about buying seeds? Why did you suddenly ask about selling seeds? Mei Hua nodded blankly. It is true that they have 1 or 2 breeders, but the breeding rate is average, about 60 to 70 pounds. In previous years, Nio's shop sold seeds at a ratio of 50 to 1. There was absolutely no way they could lower the price to do this business, but this year the opportunity came. Nio's shop thought that it was the only one in the store, so they doubled the price of seeds. In order to harvest a group of spiritual growers who bought seeds from their home, they directly harvested 8 taels per caddy, and then 8 taels per caddy. Sold by 2 to 1 pound. It's just a matter of losing money and making a profit. Of course, it cannot be considered a complete loss. As long as there is a steady demand for seeds, the breeders who cooperate with them can continue to practice the qi crossing technique. If things go on like this, after they improve their magic, the seed production rate will be greatly improved. Then if I have seeds in the future, can I sell them to you? Yes, that's what happened. Mei Hua suddenly realized, are you a breeder? Keep it secret. Chen Mo replied with a smile, in order not to appear shocking when the time comes, we need to get vaccinated first. It's better to be mysterious. What's your breeding rate? Keep it secret and I'll come back to you when I have the seeds. After that, Chen Mo didn't waste any time and walked out of the grain station under the blank eyes of the other party. Are breeders so common these days? Mei Hua muttered. Another 62 taels of spiritual sand were deposited, plus the remaining 5 taels yesterday, and now Chen Mo has a considerable fortune. When passing by the Wenxiang pavilion, the beautiful monk in a tube top approached again. Dao Yu, do you want to relax? Do you want money? Chen Mo asked back. This is the first time I heard someone ask if it costs money. Wenxiang pavilion is a gold-consuming cave. If it doesn't cost money, what do you want? Yes, yes. If it costs money, I can't afford it. Chen Mo waved his hand and left. If it's free, he will consider it, but if it costs money, then forget it. Going north, Chen Mo stopped when passing by a street stall. He suddenly thought of Wang Lixia and what she said, buy a copy of Gingjin Yiji when you have money. The other party is already dead, and this sentence can be regarded as a dying advice. For an old man who has been farming for decades, you should listen to him. Chen Mo searched for a while and finally found the small vendor who sold magic spells on the street. Dao Yu, do you want to buy magic spells? These are all spells engraved by Qingyang sect. They are honest and genuine. What is the difference between genuine and fake? It's just that the copyists are different. Chen Mo flipped through it casually and found the book Gung Jin Yi Ji that was pressed at the bottom. He asked, authentic or fake? Of course it's real. Old Wu, never sell fakes. Chen Mo flipped through it and read it once. As expected, there was an extra line of words on the magic spell column. Gung Jin Yi Ji, not yet started 0 out of 50. From this point of view, this magic spell should be real. How much? 10 taels. 2 taels of spiritual sand, will you sell it? Chapter 26, Vulnerable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. How much tael did you say? The stall owner wondered if he had heard wrongly. In the past, he had met other spiritual plant owners who bargained, but he had never heard of anyone who bargained so hard. 2 taels. Chen Mo repeated again, it would be great if he could buy things with the least money. Good fellow. The other party curled his lips, others at most cut in half, but you cut directly by the feet. Just asking if you can sell it. 8 taels, let you 2 taels. Chen Mo turned around and left. Gingjin Yiji is not a rare commodity. His family does not sell it. Other vendors sell it. The boss tried to persuade him to stay twice, but Chen Mo pretended not to hear it. Finally, after asking several vendors in a row, he finally succeeded in buying a book of Gingjin Yiji spell at the price of 5 taels of spiritual sand. 5 taels of spiritual sand is a small amount for Chen Mo now, but for ordinary spiritual plant husbands at the first and second levels of qi refining, it is also a considerable expense. Before spending these spiritual sands, you have to ask yourself, do you have the qigong pills? Do you have the spiritual sands for cultivation? Holding the spells that I just took out in my arms, if nothing unexpected happens, this year's trip to the market has come to an end. 62 taels of spiritual sands are enough even if they are squandered like last year. Now, all I have to do is to hurry back home and start the New Year's cultivation journey. Passing through the streets paved with bluestone slabs, Chen Mo quickly pushed the cart to the entrance of the market. The snow that had stopped for 2 days fell again, and the sky and the earth were vast, like a fairyland. Not long after leaving the market, Chen Mo realized something. He was being followed. Obviously, there was a qi that had been locking on him. When he turned around, he didn't see anyone in his sight. Just this skill alone made Chen Mo feel bad. The other party's realm is only higher than his own. He pushed the cart and kept thinking about countermeasures in his mind. At this moment, he also guessed that when he entered the market just now, 2 people had paid special attention to him. If nothing unexpected happened, these 2 people should be the robbers who wanted to rob him halfway yesterday. Unexpectedly, they avoided him yesterday, but they still didn't give up today. They actually changed their strategy and came to bet on him. At this moment, a sentence suddenly flashed through Chen Mo's mind: 1 robber head for 10 taels of spiritual sand. Suddenly, he stopped. This action made Zhuan, who had been quietly following him, stop. He thought, why don't you leave? Soon, in his perception, the other party actually pushed the cart back again, and in less than half a cup of tea, the person entered the market again. This made Juan a little at a loss, follow or not. He quickly found Lin Qing on the other side, and soon, the two came to the conclusion that this kid should have gone back to the market to buy things. As early as the moment Chen Mo left the market, they found him. He also recognized at a glance that this was the little spiritual plant husband who was protected by old lady Wang last year. Such a weak boy naturally couldn't find their movements, so returning to the market, in their opinion, was naturally forgetting something. They waited and waited for another half an hour. Finally, the spiritual plant husband who had bothered Lin Qing and Juan for more than a year appeared again pushing a cart. He walked back along the return road, and Lin Qing asked Juan to follow quietly. After walking about 7 or 8 miles, Juan, who had some fat on his face, finally couldn't hold back and jumped out of the woods not far away. I opened this road, this tree is mine. Before he finished speaking, a dazzling sword light flew from the horizon. The next moment, Juan, who had not yet reacted, had his head dropped to the ground. This robbery cultivator never understood until his death how a powerful cultivator in the middle stage of qi refining could follow him. The cold light converged, and Wei Wuwei walked out slowly with his hands behind his back in the vast land. He sneered at the body with its head and body torn apart on the ground. After a moment, he said, I wondered who was so bold as to come to Guqin market to rob. It turns out he was just a spiritual plant farmer. Wei Wuwei realized that he had thought wrong. He even robbed a spiritual plant farmer. How could he be a high-level and powerful cultivator? Even so, he actually mobilized a large number of troops and asked him to come in person. Thank you, Boss Wei, for your help. Chen Mo bowed, but the other party didn't care. He came to the corpse and touched the other party's waist casually. Sure enough, he found a sachet. He weighed it and found more than 10 taels of spiritual sand. He was so poor. Wei Wuwei, who was originally looking to make a fortune, suddenly lost interest and turned around and left with the 10 taels of spiritual sand. Looking at his back as he left, Chen Mo finally didn't mention the 10 taels of spiritual sand. The manager of the Niu family shop was a smiling and easygoing person on the surface, but in fact, like other casual cultivators in the market, he looked down on them, the spiritual plant husbands. It was obviously not very wise to mention the reward at this time. Chen Mo felt something was wrong. In the morning, there were 2 people whispering outside the market, but there was only one person following him. Does that mean that there is still one person who has not appeared? If so, it means that the crisis has not been resolved. He must return home as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Chen Mo pushed the cart and kept moving forward in the heavy snow. The ruts and footprints behind him were gradually covered by the heavy snow, and soon, the road was covered with snow again. Lin Qing waited for a while, but still couldn't see Juan. Not long after, he saw Wei Wuwei, the manager of Niu's shop, who came back from outside. He didn't realize that there was something wrong with this person's appearance, but wondered if Juan would take all the resources of the fat sheep for himself. You know, he was the one who kept the resources every time he robbed. Then Lin Qing slapped his head and cursed himself for being stupid. Just thinking about it without working, forgetting is no good. Lin Qing was sure that the guy must have secretly taken the benefits, which was why he didn't come back. He looked at the sky. The snow was getting heavier and heavier. If it continued like this, the ruts on the road would be covered, so he quickened his pace and chased after him, but he didn't walk far before he saw a headless corpse on the side of the road. The clothes of the corpse were very familiar. If this is not Juan, who else could it be? This scene made Lin Qing, who was just thinking about the benefits, pale and panicked. For someone who could easily chop off Juan's head, wouldn't it be the same to chop off a chicken for him to kill himself? What kind of person did we offend? He even began to tremble as he spoke, but soon, Lin Qing recovered. No. That guy just went back to the market to get help. After realizing that they were tricked, he was immediately furious. The helper he called should be Boss Wei from the Niu family shop. So, the other party should think there is only one person, otherwise Wei Wuwei would not have returned to the market. Although Lin Qing was angry, he was not so angry that he was overwhelmed. After careful analysis, he had a high probability of coming to a conclusion at this moment. Chase. Chase quickly. Chapter 27 Ambush and Kill the Robber. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The snow in early winter was not too dense, but the cold wind still hurt people's faces. Chen Mo, wearing a cotton coat, walked faster and faster, pushing the cart up, and the wheels crushed the sand and gravel everywhere. At this moment, he didn't know that another robbery cultivator had caught up with him, but his cautious nature told him to avoid all necessary and unnecessary conflicts. Staying alive is the most important thing. The biting cold wind whistled in Chen Mo's ears. After running for nearly 7 or 8 miles, Chen Mo suddenly stopped, and his thoughts flashed in a flash. He threw down the cart and turned to run elsewhere. Not long after he paused, Lin Qin, with a face full of heat, had caught up with him. In the past 2 years, he has robbed many spiritual plant husbands, and he has accumulated a lot of wealth. In addition to the necessary flame palm, he also spent a lot of money to buy his own method from the market, and it was this body method that made his speed obviously faster than Chen Mo, who was running all the way. In the empty snowy road, a cart was parked alone in the middle of the road, covered by a thin layer of white snow. Lin Qin frowned when he saw it. He was even more angry with Chen Mo. From looking for a backer last year to calling for help this year, now he has noticed his movements in advance and abandoned the car and fled. This guy has no martial ethics. Can't he stand up and let him blackmail him? Lin Qin became more and more annoyed the more he thought about it. He looked around the cart and saw a series of footprints extending to the northwest. He continued to chase without saying a word. In front of the snow, there was a forest. In front of Lin Qin, the footprints of the little rascal became more and more dense. Suddenly, he stopped and looked up at a tree in front of him that could be hugged by 3 people, trying to search for the boy's trace. The footprints disappeared here. Just as Lin Qin was circling the tree, trying to find the damned spirit plant husband, a wave of heat suddenly came from behind him. The strong sense of crisis made him turn his body subconsciously. At the same time, without any thought, he pointed at Gengjin and shot a palm of fire at his back. Bang! Look! Lin Qin was about to say it, and suddenly realized that something was wrong. The power of this palm of fire was beyond his expectation. After hastily dodging, it still hit his left arm, and the flesh and blood exploded in an instant, and a burnt smell came to his nose. Are you at the 3rd level of qi refining? Lin Qin was shocked. He didn't expect that the little spirit plant husband hiding behind old lady Wang was actually a cultivator at the 3rd level of qi refining. If that was the case, he would never take this risk, but... In a flash, Lin Qin's mind flashed the scene of brushing shoulders with Chen Mo, and the breath that was not as good as his own was obvious. Why was this palm so terrifying? Without too much time to think, another fire palm attacked. Lin Qin quickly used his body skills and barely dodged it, and at this moment, he finally saw the other person's appearance clearly. He was in his 20s or 30s, not very old. The aura he showed was indeed not as good as his own. At this moment, a smile appeared on Lin Qin's lips, because he had just seen the Gengjin finger hit the other person's chest. With his full strength attack at the 3rd level of qi refining, the other person must be seriously injured at this moment. Boy! Hand over the spiritual sand and I will spare your life. Chen Mo hid half of his body behind the ancient tree, but the current situation surprised him a little. It was the other person who was seriously injured, and he was fine, so how dare he be so stubborn? Suddenly, he realized the problem. Blue python robe. The other party didn't know he had a blue python robe. And the finger technique just now did hit him, so at this moment he mistakenly thought that he should also be seriously injured. In this case, Chen Mo covered his chest and his body slowly softened. He pretended to lean against a tree, breathing heavily, and at the same time took out the sachet in his arms with his left hand. It was heavy and full of spiritual energy. Don't kill me, I'll give you all the spiritual sand. You're smart. Lin Qin put his hands behind his back and slowly approached, but when the 2 sides were less than 7 or 8 meters away, he suddenly swung his right hand horizontally, and the heat wave penetrated his body like a flaming eagle. He's not stupid. As long as the other party died, wouldn't the spiritual sand be his? This place is so far away from the market, even if a spiritual plant husband was killed, no one would know. The life of a spiritual plant husband is not worth much. It won't let the market mobilize a large number of troops to investigate. However, just when he thought his evil plan had succeeded, the same fire palm also attacked. This time, the speed was faster and the power was greater. No. Impossible. This is Xiaocheng. Bang! The flame palm hit Lin Qing's lower abdomen, but he gritted his teeth and held on with the strength of the third level of qi refining. He didn't expect that the boy had actually practiced the flame palm to a small degree. Even he was only at the level of mastery. However, it was all too late. It was over. He clearly saw that his flame palm also hit the opponent's chest. With his third level of qi refining, the opponent would definitely die. Lin Qing struggled to stagger forward. Before the opponent burned to death, he had to pick up his spiritual sand, but just as he was about to get close, another palm went straight to his head. This slap directly turned his head into a pool of bloody mud. Before dying, Lin Qing hadn't figured it out. How could he survive after taking a blow from him, a blow from his Genjin finger and a blow from his flame palm? That's right. Chen Mo did take a blow from his flame palm, and he, wearing a blue python robe, was in a state of turmoil. Even if it was weakened by 60%, it was still a full-strength attack from the third level of qi refining. He had just broken through the second level of qi refining. How could he be unscathed? At this moment, Chen Mo was really breathing heavily. Since crossing over, this was the first time he fought with someone, and he actually encountered a tough guy. Now think about it, if Wei Wuwei hadn't helped him solve one before, he would have followed in Yin Zheng's footsteps. After this battle, Chen Mo was more determined to be cautious. Even if he had to spend some spiritual sand to ask someone to escort him in the future, he would not face these robbery cultivators directly. He stood up with the help of a tree, feeling a little scared. He stumbled to the head-smashed corpse, squatted down and searched his body carefully. After a while, he found a sachet from the other party's waist. He weighed it in his hand and thought it might be worth 30 or 40 taels. It's profitable to practice Taoism. Chen Mo sighed. Then, he took out a porcelain bottle, which contained 8 fasting pills. On the chest was an ancient book, with the 4 characters Spirit Snake Body Skill written in seal script on the cover. Body skill? Chen Mo was surprised and happy. He didn't expect to find such a good thing from the other party. He opened it and looked at it, and said to himself. No wonder I ran so hard just now, but was easily caught up. Chapter 28 The Background of Jieshio. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After touching the corpse of the robber and confirming that there was no other valuable things, Chen Mo waved his flaming palm 7 or 8 times in succession until the corpse was completely turned into a pool of flesh and blood and broken bones. Then, he took some effort to cover it with the snow around it, and then stopped. While doing it, Chen Mo secretly thought, should I learn a spell to destroy the corpse in the future? This way, I can save a lot of effort. However, as soon as this thought came up, he patted himself lightly. What are you thinking? Be careful, be careful. Don't do it if you can avoid it. He said to himself. If you have to, you must kill him with one blow. The robbery of the repair came to an end. These 2 guys were unlucky to meet someone like Chen Mo who didn't play by the rules. Of course, if 1 or 2 robbers died, there would be others who would stand up. This is really profitable. Chen Mo walked back along the original road for a while, and the cart he abandoned on the side of the road was still there. He shook off the snow on his hands, humming a song, pushing the cart, and walked home. The snow in the sky gradually became smaller, and when Chen Mo got home, it stopped completely. Back in the house, he lit the stove, took off his cotton clothes, and revealed the robe that saved his life. At this moment, the python claws on the blue python robe were slightly dim. In the words of the store owner, the formation contained in the robe became weak due to the attack, but fortunately, it didn't break, and there was still a chance to nourish it. He opened the sachet of Jieshio, poured the spiritual sand on the table, and counted it. A total of 37 taels, adding the 64 taels left from selling grain, his spiritual sand has now reached 101. At his current speed, these resources are enough for him to practice for 2 years. If he doesn't practice any spells, it may be enough for him to break through to the 3rd level of qi refining. As for how to allocate these practice resources, Chen Mo opened the panel and thought, name, Chen Mo, occupation, spiritual plant husband, unlocked, spiritual cultivation officer, unlocked, lifespan, 3077ths, cultivation, second level of chi refining, skills, nourishing chi ju, 1/200, spells, rain spreading technique, mastered 59 out of 400, air crossing technique, not yet started 550, flame palm, minor success 18/800, Genjin finger, not yet started 0/50, talent, increased production, blue, breeding, green, nourishing chi. Ju must be practiced, which is the foundation of his life. Chen Mo estimated that according to the current cultivation speed, he would consume about 1 or 2 spiritual sands every 8 days, which is about 40 or so taels a year. At the same time, rain spreading technique, air crossing technique, flame palm, Genjin finger, and spirit snake body technique stolen from Jie Xiu must be practiced, and the higher the realm, the better. In this world where the strong prey on the weak, only strength can protect oneself. However, among these spells, the practice of rain-making spell and air-passing spell has great restrictions. Rain-making spell is okay, you can work for others for free. As for air-passing spell, you can only rely on spiritual rice to feed. After thinking carefully for a long time, Chen Mo finally made up his mind. During the day, the practice of nourishing Chi-Ju is still the main focus, and the realm must not be abandoned. At night, when I return to the house, I practice the air-passing spell, Genjin finger, and spirit snake body skill alternately. As for the flame palm, because the experience has soared to 800, it can only be put aside for now. After making a good plan, Chen Mo simply cooked a bowl of spiritual rice porridge and drank it half full, and then swallowed a big pill. Holding 1 or 2 spiritual sands in each hand, he began today's practice. Outside the window, the spiritual field at the foot of Xian Peak was silent. The white snow covered the peaks and also covered the sound. In the distant Guchen market, Wei Wuwei, who returned to Niu's shop, waited for a long time at the door of the master before being summoned. He pushed the door open carefully, and a warm current immediately surrounded him. Unlike the coldness in the house, it was like spring here. And there was no coldness at all. Wei Wuwei closed the door and sat in the living room with his legs crossed. After a while, the master of Niu's shop was served and dressed and came out. The beautiful female cultivator who came out with him sorted out her clothes and then left. "What's the matter?" Niu Yid said with some dissatisfaction. Anyone who was interrupted by someone when they were making love would be a little dissatisfied. Report to the master. A robber cultivator appeared outside Guchen market. Robber cultivator? Niu Yid's eyebrows twisted into a river shape in an instant. How did you know? Someone reported it, and I set up an ambush and killed the thief with one sword. Wei Wuwei said sternly. Although the robber cultivator was weak, he also threatened Guchen market, right? What's more, the head of the family is the brother of the owner of the temple. He did this, and he was still a little proud in his heart. What does he look like? Do you remember? Niu Yid asked again. Head of the family, I cut off his head. I'm afraid you will dislike it. Bring it and have a look. Yes. After a while, Wei Wuwei took a cloth bag from outside, and when he opened it, it was Zhu En's head. Niu Yid remained calm on the surface, and after casually praising the other party for a few words, he sent him away. Before leaving, he also specifically instructed that if this happened again in the future, remember to report it first. Wei Wuwei naturally didn't understand the meaning of this sentence, and soon bowed and said goodbye. After he left, Niu Yid's eyebrows suddenly became blue and veins jumped. Damn it! I finally tricked 2 spirit plant husbands into becoming robbery cultivators, but they were killed in just a few years. Angry, that's right. Zhuan and Lin Qing, 2 robbery cultivators at the 3rd level of Qi refining, robbed those spirit plant husbands under his instruction. It is precisely because of this that these 2 people never kill people after receiving orders. Each time, they mainly extort money. The benefits obtained are handed over to Niu Yid, and the benefits are divided 40% and 60%. Although these resources are not much, they are also a considerable income. I didn't expect that it would only take a short time. 2 years, or 3 years. They were killed by their own men. Of course, Nyoyud couldn't say such things openly. Once Ziyin Peak knew about it, he would be in trouble, so, it was even more impossible to let people from the market do it. He could only find those spirit plant husbands with stronger strength to rob themselves. Forget it, forget it. Nyoyud's anger gradually subsided. After all, it was useless to be angry. This year is over. Let's look for 1 or 2 people next year. How many spiritual plant husbands in the market have reached the 3rd level of qi refining? 20, or 10, Nyoyud suddenly thought of someone. After his brother, Nyo Yuliang, the owner of the market, accompanied the grain collector of Ziyin Peak back, he specifically mentioned someone, Xiao Zhanghua. How about promoting him? Nyoyud raised the corner of his mouth, and his smile gradually deepened. The next day, the snow stopped. Chen Mo picked up a big broom early in the morning and cleaned the yard. Soon, he cleared the snow on the ridge. Just as he was about to cross his legs to practice, a figure rushed from a distance, and the speed was much faster than he imagined. Chapter 29. The seeding rate is 33-1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When the figure settled down, Chen Mo frowned unconsciously. Xiao Zhanghua. Is this person coming for him? Chen Mo didn't know why, and he vaguely remembered the conversation the grain collector had in front of him that day. If his guess was correct, this should be the purpose of this powerful monk. As expected, not long after the other party found Xiao Zhanghua, the middle-aged monk who entered Taoism through martial arts followed the other party southward and disappeared from his sight. Looking in the direction, it seems to be Fengshe. Chen Mo paid attention, but didn't pay too much attention. That was the other party's opportunity and had nothing to do with him. The small interlude in the early morning ended. Chen Mo finished clearing the snow on the field ridge, then crossed his legs and continued practicing. The days of meditating and practicing are very boring, but what else can a lowly monk like Ling Jifu do besides meditating and practicing to improve his strength? During the day, Yang Qi-ju continuously absorbs the spiritual energy in the spiritual sand. At night, Chen Mo returned to the house and started practicing other spells. Spiritual snake body technique and Gingjin one finger are relatively smooth. As they are used over and over again, their experience is also increasing. In less than 10 days, both of these 2 spells were broken through. As for qi crossing technique, in 10 days, Chen Mo had consumed nearly 50 kilograms of spiritual rice. The time he spent was no less than Gung Jiniji, but his experience was only half of them. Now it has only reached 30 points, however, it is not without harvest. 50 kilograms of spiritual rice still produced 1 or 2 spiritual seeds. From this point of view, after 500 kilograms of spiritual rice is consumed, 1 or 2 kilograms of spiritual seeds will be left, which will be enough for him to plant next year. Nearly a month passed, and Chen Mo practiced in seclusion every day. He made an unexpected discovery while meditating in the spiritual field. Originally, Xiao Zhanghua, who was located to the south of him, would be like him, practicing hard every day, but these days, he would occasionally disappear. I don't know where I went. Chen Mo was cautious now. It's spring again, it's time to plow the ground, and Sao, Ling Jifu, with his face turned to the lus and his back to the sky, walked out of their respective cabins and started the new year. Chen Mo picked up the plow and spent a day plowing all 5 acres of the spiritual field. He looked in the direction where Wang Lixia once stood. Now, it has become the spiritual field contracted by Xiao Zhanghua, and he seemed to understand why the other party told Wang Lixia about the cave heaven paradise. Xiao Zhanghua knew that Wang Lixia would definitely die, and his goal had always been clear, which was for the other party's 5 acres of spiritual land. Such a conspiracy is impossible to detect. Chen Mo returned home, and in more than a month, he made another breakthrough in his cultivation realm. The qi nourishing technique has gained 9 points of experience. The spiritual snake body technique and the Gingjin one finger have both broken through to the level of proficiency. Even the qi crossing technique, which is not very fast, has reached half of the experience after entry. After getting started, Chen Mo's breeding rate reached almost 120-1, and he only has less than 300 kilograms of consumable spiritual rice left. According to the speed, it will take about 100 to 200 kilograms to practice this breeding technique to a proficient level. so as to integrate his talents and start his journey as a breeder, seeing that there are less than 10 days left before heading to Fengshe in the beginning of spring. Chen Mo thought about it and decided to start adjusting his training strategy. During the day, you will still nourish your qi, but at night, you will stop other spells and focus on the qi crossing technique. He wanted to consume the remaining spiritual rice before going to Nyojia's shop to get the seeds, so that he could become proficient in the qi transfer technique in one fell swoop. As time goes by, the amount of spiritual rice in Chen Mo's cellar is also decreasing, as the experience on the panel increases bit by bit. This spell, which requires thousands of kilograms of rice for an ordinary spirit planter to practice to the proficiency level, has finally reached its critical moment. Buzz! A bright yellow font appeared in Chen Mo's sight. The next moment, he opened the panel with great excitement. Name, Chen Mo. Spell. Rain spreading technique, mastery 59/400. Qi crossing technique, proficient 1 out of 100. Flame palm, Shaoqing 35 out of 800. Gung gold finger, proficient 8/200. Spirit snake body technique, proficient 7/200. Talent, increase production, blue, breeding, green. His gaze was gifted, breeding, green inspire the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the children of all things, and life will be bred in them. When all things sprout, life will burst out. This method can be integrated into the qi transfer spell, and the breeding success rate will increase by 50%, already combined with Duan Qi magic fusion. You can choose whether to integrate it when casting a spell. This method is upgraded, and the talent is also upgraded. Finally a breakthrough. Chen Mo was in a good mood. After eating nearly 300 kilograms of spiritual rice, he gained 150 experience points and practiced the qi crossing technique to a proficient level. The 300 kilograms of spiritual rice only gave him 2 kilograms of seeds. If you sell 2 kilograms of seeds to a grain station, you can harvest about 15 taels of spiritual sand. So far, it's still a loss, but in the long run, he will definitely make money without losing money. Chen Mo quickly put away his joy, brought 10 kilograms of spiritual rice again, and continued to use this special breeding spell. As the spiritual energy passed through his fingertips and entered the spiritual rice, he clearly felt the flow of spiritual energy inside the spiritual seed. According to the method that he was already familiar with, Chen Mo locked the spiritual energy in the spiritual rice and stimulated the source of life inside the seeds little by little until the vitality burst out, and then returned the spiritual energy. After such a set of processes, the spiritual rice was successfully transformed into spiritual seeds. As the sky was about to brighten, most of the 10 kilograms of spiritual rice on the square table lost their luster, while a small part became more crystal clear and plump. Chen Mo breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. After some effort, he picked out the successful spiritual seeds and then weighed them on the scale. 3 taels. A full 3 taels. Putting aside the 50% increase in the talent, breeding, that is to say, the seeding rate of the skilled qi transfer technique has reached 50 to 1. Counting the talent, it can reach 33 to 1, this is almost the same as the seeding rate of the breeder specially trained by the Niu family shop. With a seeding rate of 33 to 1, if the boss of the number 123 grain station knew about it, he would definitely treat him as a guest of honor. How could they not be tempted by the business of selling seeds, which is a sure win? However, Chen Mo was also very calm. According to the calculation of 3 kinds of seeds per acre, the spiritual fields in Guchenfang City are about 1,000 acres, which means that 300 kilograms of seeds are needed. The demand for spiritual seeds is fixed, so it is not realistic to earn spiritual sand on a large scale by relying on this craft. But for Chen Mo, it is enough. It took another 3 days, except for leaving 100 kilograms of spiritual rice as an emergency. All the others were transformed by him. At this moment, the spiritual seeds in his hand have reached 5 kilograms. 5 kilograms. How should the number 1, 2, and 3 grain stations deal with such a large batch of seeds? Chapter 30 Mysterious Seed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Spring is coming. Some spiritual planters around Guchenfang City have already started sowing seeds. Next door, Xiao Zhanghua has also sown seeds into the ground and is waiting for them to take root and sprout. Chen Mo was delayed for a few days due to practicing the chi crossing technique. At this time, the 5 acres of spiritual land were still in the state of plowing the soil. Someone also quietly approached to observe to see if he was dead, so the land was left there. Of course, their wishes were met with failure. Early the next morning, Chen Mo went to Fengshe again with 5 kilograms of spiritual seeds he had bred. It was very peaceful along the way. Jia Xiu's death did not cause any waves. Even where the battle had taken place, there were no traces of any corpses. Since practicing the spirit snake movement technique, Chen Mo's running speed has more than doubled. The journey that originally took more than an hour reached Fengshe in less than an hour. This time, his goal was very clear. He would first go to the number 123 grain station to sell the 5 kilograms of spiritual seeds, and then go to Nyojia's shop to get back the 1.5 kilograms of seeds that belonged to him. There is no way, the seed money has been paid. If you don't take it, you won't get it for free. After walking through a specially open street stall in Yijio Fengshe, Chen Mo was suddenly stopped by a voice not long after leaving. He turned around and looked. A monk with thick eyebrows, square face, long hair and beard. There was sincerity in his eyes, and he looked like a good person. For an instant, Chen Mo seemed to remember where he had seen him before, until the other party spoke. "Fellow Daoist, I think you should be a spiritual planter. I have some high-quality spiritual rice seeds. Do you want to take a look?" Spirit rice seeds. Chen Mo frowned slightly. As early as the end of the year before last, when I came to Fengshe for the first time after traveling, I seemed to be stopped by the other party. At first, because I couldn't tell the difference between the real seed and the fake seed, I turned around and left without paying any attention to the other party. Now, I didn't expect that after a year and a half, the other party is still selling spiritual rice seeds here. Could it be that this person is really a breeder like him? If he was really a breeder, would the market allow him to grab business here? With doubts, Chen Mo took 2 steps forward. The middle-aged man was sitting on a wooden chair with a bamboo table in front of him, with a small bag of spiritual seeds in a white grain bag. Judging from the appearance, it is not linghuang rice. What kind of seed is this? Facing the inquiry, Yi Tingxing suddenly became interested. He gently held a small handful in the palm of his hand, handed it to Chen Mo, and said, "This is not an ordinary spiritual plant seed. I found it in a tooth cavity deep in the mountain behind Xian Peak. When I also entered it by mistake and ate one of the red fruits when I was hungry." Guess what happened? Chen Mo's face darkened. He didn't expect that the other party would actually start making up stories in order to sell goods. That's it, if he is allowed to live stream the goods, maybe there will be good sales. Yi Tingxing saw that the other party was not too interested, so he became even more lively. Guess what? After eating, I felt hot all over. I had almost no spiritual roots, but it was as if I had a golden spiritual root. After practicing, I became a metal element. Magic-like speed has more than doubled. As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves. The next moment, a dark golden ripple rippled on his arm, and in the blink of an eye, it was covered in gold. Chen Mo took a step forward, gently picked up a handful and placed it in his hand to feel it carefully. He originally thought that the other party was a liar, but he was suddenly shocked. That's right, he actually felt the fetal movement of life among these spiritual seeds. If he had not practiced the chi crossing technique, he would not be able to tell the difference between spiritual rice and spiritual seeds. But now that he has mastered the chi crossing technique to a proficient level, he can distinguish real seeds from fake seeds with ease. How do you make these seeds move? Chen Mo asked rhetorically. Fetal movement. Yi Tingxing looked at him blankly. What fetal movement? Have a baby? He has never heard of it. Aren't all the seeds the same? The other party asked again. Chen Mo rolled his eyes at him. Plant the freshly harvested linghuang rice in the ground and see if it will grow seedlings. Ah. What are you talking about? I'm not Ling Jifu, so I don't understand. Yi Tingxing scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. At this moment, Chen Mo seemed to have guessed the other party's situation. These seeds look like spiritual seeds, but it is impossible for ordinary spiritual cultivators to buy them. They cannot distinguish between real and fake seeds. Once they buy fake seeds, their whole year will be ruined. As for breeders like him, there is a high probability that they will not pay attention to the vendors shouting at the roadside. Therefore, even after a year and a half, this middle-aged monk is still selling spiritual seeds from nowhere. How long have you been selling these seeds? No one bought the last batch from last year, so I cooked and ate them for fear they would spoil. This batch I just picked up from the tooth cavity. Where is the tooth cavity? Chen Mo asked back. Then I can't tell you. This is where I make my fortune. That Yi Tingxing is not stupid. If the other party goes and picks all the fruits there and sells them to others, what else will he earn? You know, there are not many seeds in a fruit. Chen Mo put the spiritual seeds in his hand back into the bag, and after thinking for a moment, asked, how many are there here? About 2 taels. I want it. How much spiritual sand? 50 taels. As soon as Yi Tingxing held out 5 fingers, Chen Mo turned around and left. Don't even listen. Why should he spend 50 taels on something like this that he didn't even know was a spiritual plant? He is crazy. 40. 30. 20. 10 taels. Sold. Yi Tingxing kept slapping the table with one hand and quoting the price, the original high price of 50 taels. Before Chen Mo could react, he broke his bones. 5 taels. Sold for 5 taels. For the last time, sold for 5 taels. Chen Mo turned around, took out 5 taels of spiritual sand from his pocket and put it on the bamboo table, and put away the bag of spiritual seeds. Seeing that someone finally paid for this batch of spiritual seeds, Yi Tingxing was in a good mood. After the other party walked away, he reached into his arms again and took out a bag of spiritual seeds out of thin air. You know, he couldn't hide such a large item inside the clothes he was wearing. Chen Mo naturally didn't know that the person who sold him the seeds was a powerful monk with a storage magic weapon. He was playing with the unknown spiritual seeds in his hand while walking. Just now, at the moment he decided to buy it, he had already made a plan. It was decided to open up a piece of land near the wooden house to try to plant this unknown spiritual plant. As for whether the fruit that can strengthen the gold spiritual root can be harvested, it is unknown. Chen Mo's original owner was just a mixed spiritual root, with no 5 elements and no obvious characteristics, so there was no spiritual root count on the panel. For him now, planting these seeds is not a burden at all the way inside. In less than half a cup of tea, Chen Mo arrived at the 123 grain station. Mei Hua, who was originally bored, brightened his eyes when he saw him, and ran to meet him. Dao Yu, you come this time. Chen Mo lowered his voice and said, do you want seeds? Are you really a breeder? In an instant, Mei Hua jumped up excitedly.